All right, happy Thanksgiving for all those who have finished. We were just trying to finish our last bits of turkey around here, and we hope that, of course, you got to share time with your family. If you're watching on one of our 15 live streams, make sure and do a favor, subscribe, share, like, comment, and we'll be watching. We even give shout outs for the comments that we have here. In addition, if you haven't yet, you can subscribe to this podcast at www.engagingvirtualmeetings.online, engagingvirtualmeetings.online, releasing new new episodes every Wednesday. And last but not least, I just posted this, engagingvirtualmeetings.com/CON will get you a ticket to the Engaging Conference. The dates are set October 1st through the 3rd, October 2024. It's the first time we're going to go hybrid. We're going to have a hybrid audience, a virtual audience, and then our good friends in the YouTube audience. So excited for that. So excited for this amazing episode that we have here. This gentleman I met here at NSA, or National Speakers Association's Las Vegas chapter, and he was loved what we were doing, and I love what he has been doing and all that he has to share today. Let's welcome our one and only Dr. Jeffrey Magee.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Doctor, how are you doing today?
Doing great. I'm excited to be with you, John. Thank you for what you're doing. You are definitely at the front end of a massive amount of energy playing in this virtual world.
I can't wait to dive into this already. So, Jeffrey, you're already telling me today, like, how many virtual meetings did you already clock today? It's like 340 today.
I had my first webinar was at 6 a.m. Pacific. My last webinar was at 12:30 Pacific, hitting the East Coast. And I had, 5 Zoom coaching calls in between around the country and multiple sales calls. So again, when you're not on the road, virtual is absolutely the greatest introduction and invention ever gained. You should never.
And like myself too, Dr. Magee has been here a while. So let's do this. Jeffrey, which one do you prefer? I should ask, right? Which one? The doc, Jeffrey Magee. My dad is a doctor. He's a medical doctor.
I just give people headaches as a psychologist. He actually gives you fixes. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, you've already done the doctor, so Jeffrey's fine, John. Thank you for even asking. I appreciate you.
All right, so Jeff, for my friends who don't know you yet, why don't you take a moment and introduce who you are and what you do in the world?
I appreciate that. So let's do this very quickly because everyone always gets bored to tears when self-introductions kick in. Businessman, entrepreneur, worked for Fortune 100 companies, worked my way through the cycle from employee to manager to supervisor to vice president to president to the C-suite. I've owned businesses that have been very successful. I've had businesses that have imploded. And I'm in the leadership and sales space. I work with billion-dollar companies all over the country. I've developed 2 vertical market product lines. One's in leadership, one's in sales. I don't do one-time speaking engagements. I've created a year-long series. So I get in and really roll up my sleeves and work with the CEO, their executive team, and wherever they need me to go. And within that virtual, our conversation today is a major part of how you engage a client in a market space to stay connected, because you can't always be in their face. And sometimes the virtual can be the main delivery, or it's a very powerful reinforcement.
That's amazing too. I love that you have a speaking model that is not a one-time. So many speakers look for the one shot, and it is difficult. It's not the easiest thing to get into the relationship, but I think that you probably found over your years, Jeff, that once you get into the relationship, that it kind of snowballs, right?
It's huge. I mean, and every business serves a different market space, whether we're in a fast food restaurant or we're in home repairs or we're in electrical distribution or whatever. And speaking and training is no different. If you're a true SME, subject matter experts, that's the first element, John, you and I know differentiates. I don't know what the hard stats are. I'll say maybe 90% of the people who are in a business of moving their mouth and talking truly are not subject matter experts. They've worked 2 or 3 years in one job, 2 or 3 years in another job. If you look at their LinkedIn profile, it becomes very alarming if you have one brain cell. These are people that are perfected getting a job, have no clue what they're talking about, but they sound prettier than you and I. They're better at self-marketing than you and I, and they get the stage, but they don't get to come back. I'd prefer to roll up my sleeves and work with a client on the long term and help them to become more successful, given what I've learned works and doesn't work and what I glean from other clients globally that I serve. Some people prefer the big stage, one-time speaking engagement, and that's great as well if they have great content and they actually have I'm not that addict. I'd rather get in and roll my sleeves up with a client. And again, that's what I've done. I was an owner in a large training company for many years that served CPAs and attorneys, and so that's a huge market space. They have to maintain that certification. It renews every year. It's $1 billion industry, ready-made market. And virtual is another key component. We would do live seminars and record those, put them on the archive library, and resell those as self-study. And how to engage that audience, whether it's a small group or dozens and hundreds on the screen, is an art and science.
Well, here, I'll give you my short history of virtual, and I'd love to hear a little bit more. We were experimenting with things like we were on Prodigy, what it sounded like 37 years ago. I think early on,
I remember
1999, I was hosting a real program on WebEx when I think it was like 128 pixels. It was like a very small, like 6, 7 frames a second. Moved to our good friend Skype, where I got to bring in people hybrid into a virtual program in hybrid as early as 2000. So the technology
Amazing.
was there. It's just that people weren't there. And then, of course,
Exactly right.
we've been experimenting in virtual team building for years, which led up to, of course, our good friend March of 2020. So Jeff, I'd love to hear, you were already using all these virtual tools to your benefit throughout the years. I'd love to hear what were some of the tools and, of course, what were some of the top learnings you got along the way.
You hit a couple of Prodigy, WebEx, or some of the early guys. Again, Skype was also an early player, and you and I were talking offline, kind of the history chronology of this for main users like you and I, most of the people that will be watching this program. That again, if we had that crystal ball, 9/11 was really the first major push for common use of video platforms for meetings, for training, for against client connectivity. And if we were smart, we would have bought stock in Skype because that was the big guy back then. And then things kind of leveled off in early 2000s. Then you had the market recession of 8, 9, and 10, and that gave another big boost. Microsoft Teams and WebEx came back to life. Again, would have been good to buy stock then, but 17, 18, 19, everyone slowed down, got complacent. Then you had COVID in 2020, and that really changed the planet to make what we're doing here commonplace now. And how to engage and recognize if you're presenting to a group, you have to bring more energy to the conversation than you would do if you're live. Everyone's video platforms need to be live. You can't let anyone cop out and say, well, I'm doing something else. Bullcrap, get on here. I mean, you wouldn't walk in a meeting, turn your back to your boss and talk to the wall. You've got to have the cameras activated. People see each other. That becomes more interactive, more conversation. You can see people like yourself head nodding yes, no, buying in, or being passive aggressive. You can draw upon people. You don't have to do all the talking. I can ask, if there's a dozen people or more here, I can ask them questions, get them engaged. You can do more quick breakouts, pair people off into rooms, as they say, and let them work on activity, come back and debrief. I mean, video platforming is powerful. Matter of fact, I do full day training programs at the executive level. And right when COVID hit, I had a client in Wisconsin, 40 executives. I would fly to Wisconsin one day a month and do a full day leadership program. And the CEO didn't want to, hit pause. So he said, can we do something else? And I said, absolutely, we can do this on video platform. I can host it. You can host it. And the chairman of the board jumped in, and he was very not impressed with video. And he was very concerned it was not going to be a good experience because he just hadn't had a good experience, basically. Right. At the end of that session, I asked a question which could have been suicidal. So I went to him and I said, Jim, let me ask you the question. As chairman of the board, what's your feedback on today's program? And he said, this is probably the most productive, interactive conversation I've seen with these leaders in my life. I don't know if we ever want to bring you back live. We'll just keep paying you to do this virtual. So if you do it right, it works, but it takes a lot more energy from you. And you don't have to use all of the bells and whistles in virtual. You can. And if you're good at doing it, hey, hats off to you. Again, it's engaging and it's helping people where they are to move to where they need to be, whether you do that live, face-to-face on site, or live virtual.
Well, let's talk about your preference of cameras on, right? I mean, I'm a big advocate of it too. It just seems like such a waste to have billions of dollars of technology for the ability to do this, to see, and so many complain about black boxes. Like, all I got is a wall of black boxes. So Jeff, I don't know if you set like some group standards or something else. What do you do to, to get your cameras on? It's a question a lot of people ask me.
Great question. So again, it's just like if you're going to go live on site for a keynote, a convention, training program, the experts are going to have a pre-call with whoever the senior most person is at the other end. And meeting planner may or may not be it. I mean, the senior most person is going to be in that room, or you need a room. So for example, to get to your question,
Yeah.
years ago, I recognized if I'm going to do senior level leadership, I'm not doing the program if the CEO isn't in the room. If she or he's not there, does me no good to do the program because everyone's already halfway tuning me out. Oh, the boss isn't here. So how good can this really be? So I set the tone that way. So with virtual, it's the same thing. If I'm going to do a virtual program, I will have, one, I'm already going to have advocates embedded that I connect with, they connect with me, and so we like each other. So that's some of your pre-work. You get them excited up. Then you're going to also pre-set up by, again, what are the rules of engagement? Am I sending everyone a digital workbook ahead of time, for example? Am I sending them a hard copy workbook, just like I'm going to be live? Do you have all your materials? Here's the program. I'll have someone monitoring the chat if it's not me, and all cameras on. So all of that will have been addressed ahead of time, yes. And usually, ideally, you want that going from the senior most person of the team. Hey, the program's going to be next Monday. Dr. Magee is going to be live. We're signing in at 9 a.m. Here's where we're going. I want all cameras on. And as soon as we jump on, all you need is that senior most person just one time to make a comment. Looks like I got 5 black boxes there. We need those on. Then it's not you, it's them saying it, and everyone gets the clue. When you're publicly outed like that, it's amazing how cameras come on next time. And that the other beauty is, hey, would you wear crappy clothes or half naked to walk into your brick and mortar office building? No. Would you be in your brick and mortar office building on time? Yes. So the other beauty of working virtually is if you're professional, that's also a huge clue right there. If you dress up professionally to walk down the freaking hallway to go to your office in one of your extra bedrooms, then you're more inclined to actually be professional. But if you're wearing slippers and boxer shorts and all the other crap we saw during COVID, then I'm sorry, as a shrink, your head's not in the game. And I'll go up against you anytime because I know I will win. You might win 1 out of 9,000 times, but I'm going to win the other 8,999. So set the rules of engagement. Don't give anyone a pass. Nice. And if someone can't turn a camera on, out them or say, hey, politely, obviously you're a little bit busy on some other things. You might as well just sign off and get with one of your colleagues and find out what we talked about today. Boot them out of the room.
Yeah, I've had that. I've had some of my friends who were able there saying, if you don't turn a camera on, they tell them ahead of time though, but if you can't turn a camera on a certain meeting, that they will remove them from the meeting now. So, it's a really key piece. That pre-meeting is so important to set the standard, get your allies, get the people who have, either the authority or the influence to get to people. And I think one of our favorite sayings, Jeff, has been, no one wears a paper bag to an in-person meeting, so why is your camera off, for crying out loud, right?
All of those are correct. And I just think there may be some people that are bashful, get over it. But I have found, if you're working in an office environment, why is the camera not on? That to me is a huge flashing question mark. If you're working from home, why is the camera not on? Well, I know sometimes why it's not on at home. And guess what? You just got busted. Because again, it's 3:00 in the afternoon. Would you be in the office, disheveled and not showered and etc.? No, no one would. So why are you working from home at 3:30 in the afternoon? And I don't want to turn the camera on. I haven't done my hair. Well, that sounds like a personal problem, not mine. I didn't know I'm not dressed up. Well, guess what? You're about to be embarrassed. Show us your ugly birthday suit. Flip the camera on. So it just boggles my mind at the level of complacency that we tolerate in America. Let's bring it back to business so I don't go off on a tirade. And again, people would not act in most virtual situations if they were in a physical office. So to me, if you're working virtually, you should bring the same level of professionalism to that game, period, every time. And I've even coached some clients. As a matter of fact, just this last week, I had a program where I had, the Hollywood squares going on here on the camera. And the backgrounds for majority of everyone on the camera was the same company, and it was all their own backgrounds. No one really had a virtual. And so afterwards, I politely sent an email to the marketing director and said, hey, here's a quick idea from brand marketing. Create a couple of slides that everyone can use virtually with our logo on. So I said we, not you, so I made me a part of the conversation that we can use and send those to everyone and show them how to use them. So the next time they're talking to a client, it's not their bedroom window curtains they're seeing, and or we're having a meeting, it's all professional. And send me one because I would like to use them every time I sign on as well. During COVID, I mean, I probably had 20 different virtual client backgrounds I was using on a regular basis. And a lot of times, what we think is a norm if you live in these virtual worlds is not really a norm for others. And so they go, oh my God, what a great idea. You win, they win. And what you then do indirectly is you raise the professional bar without having to say it.
Yeah, I love that. So for conferences, I can end up creating customized ones like this. This was for the presentation summit, and we made this. This was in, Monterey. Have you ever been to Monterey Bay Aquarium?
Absolutely. It's beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah. So this was in a restaurant that was in there. I ran my camera for 30 minutes and I make them a custom background. Actually has their logo, in one of the top corners. Such a huge opportunity for that. I want to know, Jeff, what did you do beforehand? Like you have this coaching mentality, instructor mentality. I'm kind of curious, where did it come from? Like, did you coach or teach earlier on in your life?
Great question. So, no, in terms of the last part, I didn't grow up as a teacher, as a coach. That wasn't my background. I did go to college to be a journalist, and I did broadcast news and print business journalism in Kansas City for a couple of years. So, maybe a little bit from there, getting out of my introvert shell. But I think that probably comes from having managed and led large staffs over the years, that you realize, you can get more done if you motivate and coach through them and get them to raise up to peak performance. And you just bring that same trait and skill set to here. However, with that said, I've spent, indirectly and directly almost 40 years doing what I'm doing right now, which is, again, working with leadership teams, coaching leadership teams, doing the training programs, writing curriculum for actually some of the largest training houses in America, Skill Path Seminars, Fred Pryor, and Career Track. There's probably hundreds of trainers that have been trained on my intellectual property that have subsequently presented it to tens of thousands of human beings on the planet that, for years, I used to get royalty checks off of some of that content. But it's just a continuation of doing what you and I do here. But when I'm in front of a group doing leadership training, I'm not on the stage. I may be there at some point, but I'm working the room. I'm off the stage. I'm with them because it's us. It's about us.
Right.
And I think in virtual, you have to do the same thing. Bring the energy, just like my office here. I had it built in a way where I've got lights in all directions, and it's a 3-foot runway. I can walk and stand back and forth and move around a little bit. Again, the setup is set up in a way that goes to my personality. So I don't necessarily need a virtual. I do use virtuals, as I made comment a minute ago. But again, it's working the environment and enjoying what you're doing.
So is that where the energy comes from? Because you said you bring more energy sometimes to a virtual than an in-person. I'm wondering why you say that, and what are some of the different ways that you bring that energy?
Great question. So in virtual, I think some of the stagecraft is the same in both. Again, hand gestures, like when you're on virtual, you have to bring your hands up here further, closer up, but you have to be careful you don't cover your face, but you've got to bring them up. If you're on stage, I mean, you got all this stuff here, but on screen, now I've lost my arms. So you have to be careful of your spacing. Again, when I look at the screen, whatever screen I'm looking at in here where the audience is, one of the techniques that I share when someone says, "Hey, can you give me some stagecraft?" which is not my space. Patricia Fripp, Darren LaCroix. There's a lot of just giants in the industry you want to go to for that.
Yeah.
But some of the things I would share is I use a concept I call it the plus sign. So I'm looking at a live audience. I visualize a piece of glass between me and the live audience. Vertical line down the middle, horizontal line to the middle. Now I've got 4 quadrants, which tells me work the people I see in each of these quadrants. Now I'm not just fixated on one side of the room. Well, when I come to my screen, I want to do the same thing. Again, I'm going to have my favorite familiar face. Oh, there's John. Problem is, if you have a familiar face, next thing you know, it's like you're talking to John, and the other 900 people don't even know that, hey, I could sign off. They'd have no clue. If I keep the plus sign, I'm working people in those 4 spaces. That keeps people on their feet. I'm calling on people. If I see someone that looks like they're distracted, one of your techniques that you taught just the other day. So let me give a John Chin, yell out. If someone starts to look distracted, don't put them on the spot. See, I've seen that done and it backfires. Just make a comment. Say, John, one of the things we were talking about last week that's really important, boom. And now you share that with everyone, tied into the content in your head. And John goes, oh, back, I need to pay attention. I mean, great techniques. And that's what it's about. You have to be more on guard with what you do virtual.
Yeah.
And that's why I think you have to bring more energy to it. Because again, you have to keep people pulled in. Pace. People have different paces. For me, I've learned one of my secrets is if I talk a little faster, not too fast, because I'm talking relatively slow right now. If I talk faster, that will bring people into the audience. They got to pay attention. If they daydream and leave, boom, they're gone. They got no idea where I am.
Yeah, so I love all the different ways that you show the energy. Have you ever heard of the research done for what is it? It's the neuroscience of virtual selling on LinkedIn. Have you seen this program?
Some of it, absolutely. Talk about it. This is huge for our viewers to cue in on.
Right? Because you said you talked to sales team, and so I thought the number one point they came around, like these hand gestures that we use with a lot of our either stagecraft or as part of speaking, emphatics, is so important. They said that in the research, they found that people were, if you didn't use them, people were 20% less likely to trust you or buy from you if they don't ever see your hands during a presentation.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's
So
such an amazing, all
it's
right, body
moving
language.
around. Yep. And a lot of times, I'll have a pin, for me to remind myself not only to take notes if someone says something great, which then sends a signal to the audience to take notes, or if they're typing and taking notes. But I'll keep that because then that's another element, and I can use it as a tool. I can lean into the camera more here. Now they have a big head. I can move back. I can put the pin down. I can use the gestures. Sometimes I will, adjust my voice. I'm not that I'm, trying to be an impersonator of other people's voice and tones, but I'll change my voicing to illustrate points, pick up the energy, slow down. Sometimes I'll have my cup of coffee and I'll use that as a prop to take a drink, but I use it really to slow down is why I'm using that.
Take that pause. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so have you ever heard of this tool called Virtual Sapiens Sidekick?
No, teach me.
So in this one, this is like AI trying to help you. There's AI that comes in. It only reads allows your camera to pick up things like this. Whether you to vary your voice, whether you're uncentered, whether you're too high or too low, right? And it will then reward you. It actually has a gamification system built in it.
On my side of the screen.
Oh yeah, and
Way
so
cool.
it'll give you all these like coaching on the fly. Like I'm using, I don't know if you've heard of our good friend Udly. Have you heard of
Yes.
that one?
Yes.
So
And there's a lot of people that do virtual that use a lot of those tools, Mentimeter and, again, my mind's blank, but there's a lot of tools people use to engage that audience. And some of those I use, some of them I don't because of the context of what I'm presenting and the audience built. Some of that would be hokey for me to use. But again, it's a lot of power tools. I love the one that can become a coach in a box on my side of the screen to help me to be more engaged in case I start to bore myself.
Yeah, Udly will tell you when you're monologuing. And I think one of the number one things that it did for me is that it helped me recognize how many times I was using the word right? And it sounds easy, but when you're cruising along, all right, I was using it more. And so over the course of 3 months, I was actually able to move it from number 1 to number 5.
Right. I mean, that is a pet peeve I have is the ums because they can become very distracting and people start to make it a mathematical game at the listening side, putting check marks on the sheet.
Well, yeah. So let me tell you, what was your best thing that's happened on virtual in the last 3 years? It could have been like emotional. It could have been like energetic. I don't know. Is there something like that for you?
I think, for me, there's one, I think, common thread that I have found that using the virtual video platform, and I had that experience even today, is that when you have a larger group, so whatever that number might mean for you, I'm not talking larger meaning hundreds and hundreds, because that's unmanageable for my next point, but you have a larger group of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50-ish. It gives people a chance to see what's going on in their own background. Like, oh, wow, I mean, look at that. I didn't realize you collected guitars or, nice hat collection or, nice sports memorabilia or, wow, what a phenomenal fireplace you've got in the background. And what that does, it humanizes the audience to each other. And that builds even a bigger bond between people. So I've noticed that happen a lot. And again, that was, a thread that even happened this morning. And it gives you a chance as a presenter just to shut up and let them talk, let them engage, because that will typically bring in a third or fourth person's voice. Now you have some fun going on or some razzing going on between each other, and it makes it more teaming. And then you can see exactly where do you jump into that that rope race.
I think one of the best backgrounds that I saw a gentleman had, and it looked like one of those disasters. It looked like messy. But then if we look really, really closely, there were all these really cool things in there. For instance, he had all these Porsche magazines, right? I own a Porsche, and so I saw those. Another one was he had airline or airplane, like Cessna magazines. And so inside of this really messy background, there was actually a lot of detail inside of it
cool.
that you could pick out. And yeah, so we ended up, striking up a conversation around it. And I do think that that's one of the things
You
for
hit
people
it.
to look at, right? Is fake the
Connection.
background, even if it's an in-person background, put something in there that's personal to you, and you'll find out those who are paying attention and those.
Absolutely. Again, it is about connectivity, and you shouldn't let virtual intimidate you, scare you. You shouldn't make it cold. Again, if you would have a one-on-one meeting and you want to make it great and it's live, if you were going to have a training program or a speaking engagement or even virtual keynotes, those became the norm. At the height of COVID, people started realizing, hey, we can't not meet, and people started realizing how to put together virtual conferences. You did a lot of those big ones as well. So hey, for the viewers, if you're trying to figure out how to do a great virtual meeting and conference, you better be investing in John. Get on his schedule, get him on your schedule. But it became the norm. So again, it's a tool in the toolbox. It's not the ultimate solution. It doesn't
Right.
work every time. It's not the
Right.
right solution every time. It's just another tool. And if you use it smartly, you should make it a great experience, just like you would any other event you're making.
Yeah, that's really one of the keys is like in our conferences that we run, our goal is to make it engaging. And that's where, people decide on their own to turn on the camera, not because we tell them. They're involved, they're engaged. And most importantly, most of the speakers we bring in, they want to hear from the audience. They don't want to hear themselves talk. They want to hear the highlights from the others. So that leads me to this, Jeff. Tell me, when you're in a meeting as the attendee, not the speaker, what has to happen for you to be engaged inside of that virtual meeting?
Wow, that's a great one. So one, I'm old school. I have all kinds of technology in my life, so I'm not anti-technology, but I'm old school. I always mind map, take physical notes when
Yeah.
I am playing student, whether it's virtual as I did with you the other night. As a matter of fact, I had my glass of wine and I'm on here and I'm still dressed up in my professional dress shirt because it's a professional event. I owe you that respect to not come in my slippers and sweatshirt, but I'm taking notes. And so then from the notes, I start to answer your question. One, am I getting actionable ideas? Am I getting actionable strategies? Am I getting actionable techniques or tactics? And if I'm not, then either I need to check if am I really paying attention? Yes, okay. Then I need to check, can I insert a question to get inside that presenter's mind to let them go deeper to provide value to me. And if they can provide value to me, I'm going to be selfish. If they can provide value to me, I know they're going to provide value to everyone else around me. I don't want my time wasted. So that's one. Two, if I go to a meeting that let's say is 1 hour long or more, if I leave with one sheet of notes, that meeting sucked. It sucked. I mean, if your mouth is going to move for an hour and I only get one legal pad of notes from you, I'm sorry, I'm tracking way too much because what I'm doing is I'm listening to what you say and I'm doing several things. And people have seen me in regular meetings like National Speakers Association be one. There's other groups that will use that one because that was part of your introduction.
Yeah.
They know that I take notes. When that sheet's full, I grab my camera, I shoot a picture of it, and I send it to me, and I go to the next page. But I also take those notes because sometimes I have colleagues that may be missing something that's being said, so now I can share those notes with people. That's one thing I try to do to help everyone else. But then from that, I'm also listening, and if I get an action item, I'll grab my calendar and I'll write a note on next Thursday to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm back to taking notes. Or I'll grab my phone and send myself or someone on my staff a message, hey, talk to me about X, Y, and Z. So I'm looking for actionable. It may not be right this second, but if I can leave with a half a dozen to 20 notes throughout my calendar over the next 10 days of things I need to do because of what you've just said,
Yeah.
if I can take your model that you taught basically, and I won't give the secret away, people need to pay you some money to hear it, but if I use your model and I can use that to engage on a coaching call, if I can use it to engage in my own training or speaking, I'm getting actionable ideas and notes. I mean, when you did your program, not only did I get actionable notes, but before I even knew you had a podcast, I was thinking, okay, wait a minute. I do a magazine called Professional Performance Magazine, 500,000 readers, been out for 33 years. Huge people write for the magazine. This is an SME that I know owns this topic, can write an article in my magazine for people that would be benefit to them. And I reached out to you on that. See, that's where my mind is going. While you're talking, I'm thinking about not only the now, but how do I use this in multiple platforms and multiple disciplines once we leave? That's how I look at it going into these meetings. So if I go into a meeting and I leave with one page of notes and it's basically going to the garbage can, but it just was my way to stay focused so you think I cared, but I'm walking around going, wow, that was a waste of time, then I'm not impressed. So I'm always looking for more than one page of notes. Actionable.
I love that. The actionable part is really key. You know, our good friend Bill Staten here in our NSA Northwest chapter invented something called the Top 10, where they started every meeting. Number one, they start on time. That's my other piece, Jeff. Always start on time, always end
Brilliant.
on time. But they would present something in the first 10 minutes, and it had to be actionable, something that was like, a tip. And what was great is by starting that first part of the meeting with something actionable, who was a different speaker, it immediately gave somebody the tangible value saying, everything else after this is like a bonus, is extra, it should be gravy if it's really, really good.
I like what Bill's doing. When I was president of the Oklahoma NSA chapter, which is when I received my CSP in 2000, we added a 30 to 45-minute module into our half-day meetings, and we call it the CSP Accelerator. So we always have a CSP or someone that would have value to someone at that level as an additional speaker to our meeting on top of our featured speaker. And they do the CSP Accelerator. It's the exact same element. If you can get value out of that one, then everything else is gravy. When I was on the Salt Lake City Mountain West chapter board, did it there, and here in Vegas, I've been president twice, and we've been doing it here since I came here 10 years ago. Same thing as Staten. I mean, if you can have something that's actionable, and also gives you a chance to highlight another SME within your chapter or someone you're bringing in from the outside, it can help at that level, raises the bar of professionalism, and then people get action. And that's what it should be about. You should never play to the lowest denominator. In any professional trade, you should never play to the lowest denominator. You can have programs as a sidetrack for emerging professionals in that industry, or someone who's new transitioning into whatever the industry is. But if you're talking to a room full of people that are supposed to be doing it, you should come in and raise that bar every time on those people. You do that,
Yeah.
you attract all the A stars. You don't do that, you run them off.
That's a great idea. I just received my 5-year pin for NSA, and I'm about to go and apply for my CSP. For those who don't know,
Do it.
Certified Speaking Professional. Jeff, I would love to hear from someone who's been a CSP now for what, 23 years. I'd love to hear any either advice or somebody for new who is applying.
So and that's a great question. So here's how I address it, and let me respond to it in more of a macro way.
Sure.
If you're a professional in anything on this planet, as you're listening or watching us right now, there is a trade association for you. You made comment your father's a medical doctor. So within the medical doctor industry, there's a bazillion sub trade specialists, orthopedic, heart, whatever. If I'm an accountant, if I'm an engineer, if I'm an appraisal, if I am project management, if I am fill in the blank, if anyone is in a trade, there's a trade association for you to belong to. So you should, step one, within that trade association, they make money a couple of ways. Well, one of the ways they make money is through certifications. The implied comment is if you have those certifications, you're vetted to be somewhat legitimate and therefore a safe purchase for the person on the road that doesn't know better. If I want to buy, again, did you go to law school? Great. Have you passed the bar? No. Well, you suck. Shut up, sit down. You went to med school. Fantastic. Are you allowed to do medicine at any hospital in town? No. Then shut up, sit down. You studied it. That's one thing. But has anyone put a stamp on it saying, okay, we legitimize you and we will let you do this? So you should have that. Within the National Speakers Association, they have one earned certification, and that's the CSP. They give you up to 5 years to earn it. If you can't earn it in 5 years, you should start over. I personally have a problem with 5 years. I think that they should only give you 3 years to get it, because one of the requirements is income earned. The other is number of customers, clients, testimonials, feedback, a great documentation trail, etc. I love the model, but the income part, again, gives you a way to measure. But 5 years, $250,000, that doesn't impress me. It means you're making roughly $50,000 a year, and that's poverty pay. If I want to get in this and I want to be, professional, then 250 should be what you're making every year, not every 5 years. So again, I'm giving you my view on it. But to me, it's a great mark of legitimacy. National Speaker Association has done a brilliant job with it. Anyone who's in this industry should be applying for it. If you've been doing this for more than 5 years, then you should be doing this. If you're new into the industry, go to their website, download the application. I tell people, whether you're ready to apply or not, the application will give you a great template of how to build your business from day one, and go from there. And then again, there's levels of CSPs. Like I just said, there's a person who takes 5 years to get it, and there's a person that could qualify every year. If they, gave you, 12 months, if you could put all the data on the table, you get it. So it's a great tool. Have I been hired or not hired because of it? That's a different question, and I actually don't know the answer. I can't say having CSP has gotten me hired, and therefore I wouldn't have got the job. But I think it's a legitimizer, it's a credential, it's professionalism. And just as you expect your doctor to maintain their license and your CPA to maintain her or his license, same in this industry. Great question.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jeff. With that, you're a person, you've been ahead of the curve in multiple other places. I'm just curious, what do you see for the future of virtual and hybrid? Whether you think there's a future or not for hybrid, where do you think all this is going to go? Because now in the last 3 years, we saw an explosion with it. We saw a little bit of retraction from the in-person. I'm just curious, where do you think it's going to head on the virtual and the hybrid side?
It's a great question. I think part of it is it's like the new kid on the block. People are still trying to figure it out. So my first answer is everyone's still trying to figure this out.
Yes.
I think some businesses are going to find that this becomes a very powerful tool in their lineup of deliverables and how they serve their market space. Others are going to play with it and realize that's not right for them. So that would be my first answer. Second, I think that again, there's a lot of ways to look at this. You can spend a lot of money in production. I own interest in a television network and studio based here in Vegas. So you can go in and make things look big and pretty in studio. And sometimes I go in the studio with a green screen and I have all kinds of phenomenal background that looks like it's a bazillion-dollar production, but I don't think you have to go that far. I think, the raw video footage, kind of like, the cameraman on the street, as they say, real time. I think that's how I'd start to answer your question. I think in the future, there's going to be live programs that are live streamed, and that live stream isn't going to be edited. It's going to be like, this is just like the live experience. Go back, hit click, and watch it a year from now. It's sort of element. NSA has a concept called the vault.
Yeah.
I don't know where they got the idea, but I'm going to take partial credit for it, because in the early 2000s, we did this in Oklahoma, and every national president came through our chapter. They wanted to come to Oklahoma. We were one of the biggest chapters in America at the time. And the vault didn't exist anywhere else. And we had that back in early 2000s. And we have it in NSA Las Vegas today. And NSA nationally started it a couple years ago as well. But in the vault is another way of looking at it. Whenever anyone comes in live to our meeting, we record them. We put it raw, basically in the vault. And if you're a dues paying member, that's a value-added service you have. You can go back in and see some of these phenomenal personalities. You would pay tens of thousands of dollars to spend a day with them. You can watch them in real time whenever you want to grow your portion of the business. So I think we're going to see a lot more, blended meetings. That people bring in live, but they're going to realize, hey, we should videotape them in real time, and we don't necessarily have to do a major production with this. So those that can't get here can buy a seat, and we can have it in the cloud, as they say, for later. The downside to your question, though, is this. The downside is the consumer, there's an old adage, buyer beware, and there's no way to regulate. The problem today as we record this is that everyone with a fingertip thinks they're a writer, author, and blogger, and everyone with a mouth thinks they're, in essence, a podcast, they're an author, they're a speaker, they're an SME. And the danger is, I'll just go 50-50. 50% of the people putting out content shouldn't be allowed to talk in public because they have no clue what they're saying. It's like your father being a doctor. I mean, again, you want to get medical advice from the right person, not the wrong one.
That's right.
I think there's a lot of people out there that are going to create noise and damage, which then means it's business for you and I that actually have a clue. So the last answer to that is I would just because it's on the internet doesn't make it true and honest. And just because you read it doesn't make it a fact. So it's important to, again, kind of look at the credentials of the person whose mouth is moving. I mean, there's people that have spent their entire life as, basically fashion experts, basically image consultants that are now trying to be business psychologists, and present. And they look cute, but good luck trying to have a deep conversation with them. And there's people that, again, go back to your father being a doctor that want to do telemedicine that should never be allowed to, spell the word telemedicine.
Yeah, I'm curious, Jeff, what's your short version of AI? Because AI is now at that stage, which is, the buyer beware. The one thing we tell people is that if you put your name on it, even though you used AI to generate it, you need to go and check it, right, before it goes out there. And I'm just curious what your current viewpoint is.
Well,
I know it'll change.
As a college student of journalism and writing, which doesn't necessarily make me right or wrong, And as someone who's written 33 books translated into 21 languages with 4 legitimate bestsellers, not someone who sold a book at 2 a.m. and they claim that they're a bestseller. 4 graduate textbooks that have went into multiple revision editions, so not once one and done. Original intellectual property. So I got to say the backdrop to give you the forward answer. I think AI is merely a tool, and utilized in the right way at the right time can complement what you're doing. The caution signs, and you hit one of them, is just because you hit click and did it doesn't mean you're done. It's just like, college kids plagiarizing and getting away with it and they think they won. Well, the only person they really hurt was themselves, because eventually someday in the future someone's going to hire them based upon their resume to perform, and they're not going to know how to perform because they cheated their way to where they are. So that's one. 2, you're exactly right. If you're going to use AI and put your name to it, you might want to read the final product to make sure it's coherent and it's saying things right. Because if you are a subject matter expert and you read any AI document, you'll be able to catch the potential flaws or problems, and then you can edit that in real time, and now you've got a great document. But keep in mind, where does AI source itself from? I mean, if one of its source platforms is something called Wikipedia, enough said.
Enough said. Well, we want to say a few things to these people. We want to say hi to Victoria, Sam, SJ Day, and let's see, I think we got one other who's watching us online. So thank you for those who are watching live on the show. Jeff, what was, I did have one other side question for you. Let's see. No, hold on a second. Let's see if I get the right one. All right. Well, let me ask this question here that I think it'll be really one of the keys. So, Jeff, if people only remember one thing from this interview, what do you think is the one thing that you want them to remember?
I'm going to use the word legacy. What you do is your legacy. People are going to remember you. So I could give a specific, more micro answer, but I'm going to cop out and not go there. So your legacy, if you feel comfortable on a video platform and you make it a great experience for everyone else, that's your legacy. If you truly are an SME and you can bring your A game of intellect to this video platform and share it with people so you can give them actionable content that they can put into action right now so that their life becomes better, that's your legacy. If you engage people in a polite conversational way and you can let your audience shine, you don't have to say everything. You can tee up what you want the message to be given and see if someone else can help you to get there. That's your legacy. If you have a bad experience, that's your legacy. If you do all the talking and don't engage someone, that's your legacy. So I'll use the word legacy.
I love that. Speaking of legacy, I love, what I wrote here while listening to you was stop watching Netflix and start watching the NSA Vault. And did you know that Dick Cavett, it's Cavett. Cavett left.
Cavett Roberts, the founder of NSA.
Cavett left on his website a series of audios that he recorded, and that they're available for free. So I thought that was another great piece from NSA, is that Cavett left a legacy. What legacy do you think you want to leave before you're done, Jeff?
Yeah, again, I'm going to go back to legacy. My legacy is, again, how to help people to recognize they are human capital. The most precious capital on the planet is you as a human being. Again, in business, we spent too many decades looking at capital as fixed assets, brick and mortar, equipment, vehicles, etc. Cash on hand. But the reality is, whatever you have, the competition can get. Whatever the competition has, you can get, except the human capital. So the people in your universe are not in someone else's. The people you hire are not working for someone else. And when you look in the mirror, again, as a virtual presenter, whether you work in any major corporation or small business, if you're using this video platform with your team and your staff, how do you bring your A game to this group so that they are impressed with you and it motivates them to raise their own performance bar to be better? Again, it's about human capital. And so I've kind of made that my focal point in the books I write, the magazine I publish, the people that contribute to it. It's how do you develop that human capital? You talked about Cabot Roberts, one of the members of our NSA chapter here in Las Vegas, Marilyn Sherman. And if you're not familiar with that name, you better be tracking everybody. She's the front row goddess and woman. But every time we have a gathering at her house, of the chapter leaders, or have a dinner or something, she a lot of times has on her TV a video playing of one of Cabot's speeches and stuff. So yeah, It's out there in YouTubeville, and it's phenomenal. It's about giving. My magazine Performance, before Zig Ziglar passed away, and he was a mentor of mine, wrote the foreword to several books. He gifted to me 70 articles that had never been published. So the last article in my magazine for years is always an article from Zig, and I will grab out of the archive list he sent me. I have never, ever had to put a publisher's comment before his article to put it into context. He had such vision. What he wrote 20 years ago still is in context today. So legacy, action, human capital.
Well, you'll appreciate this too. Talk about legacy. I actually took the energy and effort to go to Jim Rohn's memorial, and that was like
the legends.
Legacy. That was worth it. So speaking of legacy, Jeff, thank you so much for sharing your human capital with us today. Here, I got one message for you. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready, sir.
Thank you for attending the performance. And a special thanks to all those who helped with the show.
I love you,
Jeff.
John, you're great.
Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you next time, and hopefully I'll come see you in Las Vegas.
Please, anytime. Open door.
Cheers. All right. Thank you so much. You've been hanging out with Dr. Jeffrey Magee here in Las Vegas, telling you to get off Netflix and start watching some amazing stuff like In the Vault of many of the places like National Speakers Association. I hope you loved this episode. If you did, make sure and subscribe, hit the bell, share, like, comment. We know that you're here. You can also, again, subscribe to the podcast here at engagingvirtualmeetings.online. You can subscribe on one of your 13 favorite podcast locations. And just like Jeff did, I got to meet him here in Las Vegas, and I said, hey, do you want to be the next person? You just go to this website, engagingvirtualmeetings.com/meet, select interview, select your best hour of the day, and you could be the next guest here on the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. We hope you enjoyed the energy and the legacy of Dr. Jeffrey Magee, and we'll see you next time.
Always start people and keep people. Show